as a PPC. Is this an exciting opportunity?
Absolutely. It's the first time I've really had the opportunity to have my own campaign, to really get out there and to connect with people, and to be really just doing a campaign for myself on the issues that I believe are important to people here. I've had the opportunity to campaign for the Lib Dems in lots of other areas, from the Highlands of Scotland as far as Cornwall, so it's fantastic to be here and leading my own campaign.
Different areas of the country, indeed two you've described, have been very strong Lib Dem areas. How do you think you can break through in an area, say for example Thurrock?
I think really we're looking at ways of ensuring that local people know that we're here in the community for them, know what we're doing, knowing what our priorities are, and hopefully looking a little bit further into what the Liberal Democrats can offer. I think it's really important to show people that we are here and that we do have a presence, and that we're hoping to build on that, and that if anyone has any queries, any questions, they can of course get in touch with the Thurrock Liberal Democrats, and we'll tell them a little bit more about what we're about.
I guess over the last 6 years, Lib Dems could be seen as the party of integrity. Indeed, Charles Kennedy's stance on Iraq, all the way through to Vince Cable's performance regarding the economy. Is that something that a crest of a wave that you can ride upon?
Absolutely, I hope so. I think this is a real opportunity now for us as the third party to break through. We're seeing, obviously, Labour in a lot of trouble at the moment. There's a real distrust of both, I think, major parties at the moment. And I think people really have some difficulty connecting with David Cameron. It's very difficult to know what he's about, although hopefully we'll see a little bit more of his real policies over the next 6 months, rather than this image that he's built for himself. So I think the Liberal Democrats there are really to provide an alternative to those two parties. And if people look a little bit more at what we're saying that, we are a party of integrity. We are a party that wants to represent people and bring that power back to the people and move away from this sort of problematic Westminster bubble that politicians have got themselves into, which means that they are quite often self-interested, self-serving, and they're not really looking after the needs of the people that they're supposed to represent. And at the end of the day, they're accountable to those people.
Are you surprised that both parties, from the be the bang of New Year's Day, have both more or less launched their campaigns?
Not at all, no. I mean, any general election needs a long time to sow the seeds of what people are campaigning for, what the policies are. I think it's going to be a really interesting 5 or 6 months in the run-up. It'll be an election quite unlike anything we've ever seen before, and I think it's quite important to set out as early as possible really what the objectives are, because this is an important decision for people to make when they get to the ballot box. This is something that they want to think about, and especially if they're floating voters, in other words, if they haven't really made their minds up yet, they need all that information available to them. It's a little bit like any issue of consumer choice. People need to be able to have that information to make that choice.
You mentioned consumer choice. A lot of people now think that when voting behaviour is now what we call the rational choice model, that people are selecting a product. Do you feel like a product, or do you feel like a person of principle?
I don't want to feel like a product at all. I think the problem with feeling like a product is that you very much sort of have this idea where you're selling yourself. And I think when you start to sell yourself, you sort of lose to a certain extent some integrity. And I think at the same time it's important to be seen as a person, to be seen as having the same concerns as the majority of people out there. Working, making ends meet, getting food on the table. I think some politicians do market themselves as products, and they've lost the ability to sort of connect in that way with people's real issues. So hopefully people won't think that I'm a product.
Of course, mentioning machines and products, you'll see Cameron and Brown with battle buses and helicopters. Indeed, here in Thurrock, we'll see probably the local, Carl Morris and Labour out campaigning with his team in Chadwell St Mary. But is it just you on your own here?
Unfortunately, resources are very slim in this part of the country, and of course, the National Party, wants to really work on building up the party in this area, for example. So you won't see me out in a big battle bus, unfortunately. I won't be driving a battle bus, and I won't be really able to perhaps be quite as vociferous in terms of some of the support that Carl Morris has in terms of his team and so on. So you won't be bombarded with leaflets from me, least of all because I can't afford to do that. But I will definitely be around. I'll be a big presence, but I certainly won't be driving around in a very big bus, unless of course someone wants to donate one.
On a national level, it could easily be, as some pundits say, with a hung parliament. With that in mind, do you think the Lib Dems have quite a role to play in the future?
Absolutely. If there was a hung parliament, I think, we would have to seriously consider how we would react in that situation, and that of course would depend on whichever party comes into power. I think if Labour come into power, there are certain areas that we can work together on, but I think we would have to be very keen to encourage Labour to bring about a system of proportional representation, a full system of proportional representation, which at the moment they're not considering doing in quite the way that would be fair to the people of the country. So that would be a dividing line for us in a coalition with Labour. At the same time, with the Conservatives, there are issues like Europe and things that we may not necessarily agree on. So whichever party does come to power, and in the case of a hung parliament, there needs to be a lot of consideration about how we would move forward.
Every politician has areas of strengths and weaknesses. Gordon Brown, some would say a natural economist, but some might also debate that. Is there any area which you would say is your particular strength?
I'm particularly interested in education. I'm particularly interested in the economy, and I think that's a real issue for people at the moment. There's obviously a lot of talk about the economy, but what I'm really interested in is how it's actually affecting people, and not so much the talk of the banking and the bonuses and the banking crisis, but what does it actually mean for the amount of money that you've got in your pocket, what you can spend your money on. So I think that's really important. And just to come back to education, particularly in an area like Thurrock, which has a lower than average skills and qualifications level, that's another real passion of mine, along with of course the environment. I've done work in the past in my day job on environmental policy and climate change, and how all these issues affect not only us here at home, where we might be experiencing more flooding and changes in temperatures, but also people in third world countries who are disproportionately affected negatively by climate change.